Hey TCS TV viewers, it's Dave and Evelyn from the camera store, and today we have not just one, but two big announcements.
Yes, we both have the Fujifilm X-T200 in our hands, but that's not all. There's another special announcement that I've been dying to tell you.
So the X-T200 is the updated version of the X-T100, and with it comes along some brand new features.
Yeah, the X-T100 was a camera that was built to be really compact, affordable, and still have a lot of the classic Fuji styling and handling that a lot of the X series cameras offers. Now there's a lot lacking from the X-T100 camera. The autofocus system wasn't that great. They had kind of an embarrassing 4K video mode. It only shot in 15 frames per second, and there's a lot to still be desired. But the one thing that was still true about it is that it felt great. It gave you access to a lot of Fuji's classic things like their film simulations, and was still a good camera to experience.
So the X-T200 represents a little more of a budget-friendly option from Fuji, and it borrows a lot of the technology from their XA7 camera, featuring a 24 megapixel sensor, but it's not an X-Trans sensor, it's the Bayer pattern sensor, featuring a faster sensor readout, which should really help us with the rolling shutter.
Yeah, they do that by enabling a new copper wiring structure that we saw in the announced XA7 that came out in the fall. And that camera had some really nice bells and whistles to it. It had a new form factor without an electronic viewfinder. When we did our last Fujifilm camera review, Dave said a pretty bold statement about the XA7 in that it really wasn't, in his opinion, any better than a smartphone, mostly due to the functionality.
I personally am having trouble justifying this camera over top of using a modern generation cell phone. Yeah, when I worked with that camera, it was very similar to using a smartphone. The image quality was certainly better because of the sensor size, but the functionality was very much reminiscent of a cell phone.
Yeah, so we'll see now that we have the electronic viewfinder in this X-T200 and some other enhancements that actually make it a pretty substantial upgrade over its predecessor, the X-T100, if this camera would do it for Dave over a smartphone.
We've been shooting with this camera for a little while, and I really like an electronic viewfinder.
Me too.
At my age, having to wear reading glasses when I'm using these cameras, I'm constantly taking my glasses on and off to look at the rear screen and the rear panel. I can do all the menus and stuff through the viewfinder, and I find that really nice to work with. I'm not pulling my glasses off and on all the time.
Yeah, you can put it in Dave mode and he like really cranks that diopter in.
Yeah, I got a couple notches left still. There's still hope for me.
Couple notches, yeah. I like having an electronic viewfinder too, especially on a brighter, sunnier day. Now we're in the middle of winter in Alberta and it is cold and kind of cloudy and gross, but when it becomes spring and summer, we're gonna love this electronic viewfinder.
Yeah, I mean, electronic viewfinder is also really helps with your stability. I mean, holding the camera out at arm's length, you're not doing yourself any favors when it comes to, camera shake. Holding it up to your eye certainly gives you a lot more stability, so I really appreciate any camera with a viewfinder.
Yeah, now we should mention that it's not a stellar electronic viewfinder. It's 2.36 million dots, and so it's not amazing. Like when you look at it, it's still fairly small compared to some of the other cameras that we've seen. But again, this camera is under $1,000 Canadian for the body, and so we're looking at something that is still within that more budget-friendly lineup.
Yeah, and you really have to take that into account, all the features they've added to this camera. Now, some of the controls I really like. I mean, Fuji makes a great, sexy-looking camera.
So nice.
But the controls, if you're in manual, for instance, we have two dials right at our fingertips that allow us to adjust shutter speed and aperture.
Yeah, I like the twin dials on this side, as well as the other dial that you can either have for your film simulations, or you can program it to be your ISO. And so you do have that more manual feeling experience. But the thing that I really like about these entry-level Fuji cameras, we saw it in the XA7, is having a really nice, beautiful graphic interface with a nice big screen.
Yeah, they're certainly adding more sort of graphic icons rather than words, and you don't have to be such a photo geek to really get into this camera. You can sort of see things a lot more.
Yeah, and this screen is quite a bit bigger than a lot that you'd normally see. It's in a different aspect ratio as well. It's 16:9, and the nice thing with that is that you have a lot of the details around the edges without really cluttering up your view of your image. The other nice thing is it's really nice touch functionality, and so you even have the ability to swipe so you can see what your film simulations look like, as well as some of the other camera features.
So we do have the brand new menu, which is more graphic based, but we also can revert back to the quick menu, which we're so used to with every Fuji camera.
Yeah, and there hasn't been any updates there. It's still that classic grid look, which you can customize, but I think it would have been nice to have something a little bit more kind of colorful and in line with the rest of the Fuji upgrades. But otherwise, I think navigating a Fujifilm camera is really nice. It's super easy. And for me, when I talk to a lot of beginner photographers, I always tell them that a Fuji camera is really nice and easy to operate. And compared to some other manufacturers like Sony or Panasonic that have really deep, complex menus, Fuji has done an exceptional job of really attracting those beginner photographers that can use this as a tool and really grow with it. I really like having the touch screen, I think, in general, but also from a handling perspective, they changed the physical feel of it. And so initially out of the box with the X-T200, there really wasn't much of a grip to it. You could add on an extra piece, but out of the box, it wasn't as nice. This now has a more substantial grip to it. And although the construction of the camera, you know, is a little bit on the cheaper side, it's more of a plasticky type of construction. When you feel this leather finish to it, I actually find that it feels like a decent quality camera.
I have to agree, the leatherette finish they have on the front of the camera here feels very nice, and it's a really nice feel to it. I don't have a worry about dropping this camera when I'm hanging on to it, including the nice little thumb rest on the back. I should mention that this camera is not weather sealed, so be careful of that. If you look at the ports, you'll see it's USB-C, and that allows you to charge the camera through that port.
And because Fujifilm is all about style, you have 3 different color options to choose from. Fujifilm has come a really long way in terms of autofocus performance in the last few years. I primarily shoot with an X-T3 and I love the autofocus performance. It's really snappy, it works well for people, it has good face and eye detection. But before, the entry-level models were one step behind. But now we're seeing actually really good autofocus performance in the X-T200. To me, it looks like it's pretty much on par with the X-T30, and we're seeing 425 phase detection autofocus points, providing almost 100% coverage of the sensor area.
Yeah, I agree. We're finding we're getting really snappy focus to this. It is picking up eye from a very decent distance, and we are getting some nice features like stepping up from 6 frames a second with the X-T100 to 8 frames a second with the X-T200.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to win any awards as being like a sports and action camera, but at the same time, if you're photographing people, you're doing street photography, travel, family stuff, kids and pets running around, then it's going to be able to keep up with that kind of action.
Yeah, it all adds to the versatility of this great little camera. When it comes to video, the X-T100 was almost laughable with its 4K video at 15 frames per second.
Yeah, it sucks. That's like not a video recording mode that you'd ever use. The other thing is a lot of the earlier Fuji cameras had a 2.5mm microphone jack, and so you always had to use an adapter, and anytime you use an adapter, it interferes with your audio quality. And so now we finally have a 3.5mm microphone jack.
Finally, Fuji listened. Here we are testing the brand new X-T200 with the built-in internal mic, and we're in the Canadian wildlands where you can see a very rare blue Arctic wolf behind me. Here we are using the built-in 3.5mm microphone jack with the Rode NTG video mic.
And we haven't gone completely away from using adapters though. One of the nice things is that the USB-C port is actually enabled to be headphone monitoring. So if you have some regular 3.5mm headphones, then you can use their supplied adapter in the box.
This is nice because if you want to get more into video and step up your game a little bit and being able to monitor your audio, it's nice to have that option.
Yeah, and we do now, of course, have a 4K 30p, just like we had in the XA7. And so we actually have some usable, very nice video, and autofocus seems to perform really well using that phase detection autofocus system.
Image quality from this camera is really good. We have a 24 megapixel sensor. Now it is the Bayer pattern, not the X-Trans sensor. Now I do like the X-Trans a little bit better, but this performs really nicely.
We should also mention that on the Bayer sensor, it doesn't have the anti-aliasing filter. And so although you don't get that moire prevention, it is supposed to be a little bit sharper for this resolution and this processing power. And speaking of the processor, for JPEGs, we do have all those film simulations that we like. Provia, we have Estia, classic chrome, and it's all based on, of course, Fujifilm's old film stock. But I did notice that we're missing some of my favorites. My new favorite one from the X Pro 3, the Pro Nag, that's not on this camera, and it's still not on my X-T3. It's also missing Acros and Eterna, yes, for both video and photo. But the Acros, of course, is a missed one for black and white photography. And it seems to be that they're only putting that in the higher end models.
Yeah, now I really love the Acros as well. That's one of my favorites. If I had the choice, I would like to have that one in here, but I guess we can't have everything of this.
We cannot have everything. But Dave, from an image quality perspective and just overall functionality, is this better than your smartphone?
I knew that was going to come. I would definitely take this over my cell phone. You know, ergonomics, I got a nice big grip to it, and I've got this viewfinder at 2.36 million dots resolution, which is very good, and I love using it when I'm walking around shooting street and just family kind of stuff.
And I have to say, whenever I pick up a real camera, and in particular Fuji cameras, I enjoy the experience. I feel like I'm a lot more inspired that I'm actually taking photographs opposed to just, you know, flicking them away on a smartphone.
Well, that's part of it. You want to enjoy the whole experience of taking pictures, and you're going to be more inspired.
Overall, I think that this is a really powerful photography and video tool that both beginners and intermediate users will enjoy. I certainly enjoy shooting with Fujifilm cameras. And of course, we want to know, what do you guys think? Do you like the X-T200? Do you like the direction that Fujifilm is going in? Let us know by commenting below.
Make sure you follow us on Instagram.
And if you're new to our channel, please subscribe and hit that notification bell so we can catch you again very soon.
Wait, we didn't forget about the second surprise.
Oh yes, the second surprise. So thank you for waiting. I have some really exciting news to share with you. My husband, Jordan Drake from DP Review, and I are expecting our second baby in May of 2020. It's very exciting. So we hope you guys like newborn photography, because there'll be some of that. But if you do the math, I'm currently about 6 months pregnant. And nobody has really caught on yet, which is kind of amazing, but I think that's because Brendan's expert cropping skills. But if you guys want to stay tuned on more camera reviews, you want to get some baby updates as well, then make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if you want to see our latest review, then click here. And if you want to see more gear from the camera store, then click down here as well.